can't see the PowerPoint. Anyways, yeah. So my name is Georgia. Um, I'm going to present you some preliminary results from part of my PhD research. So it's going to be an exploration of sisters' experiences growing up with a brother or sister with autism. Um, yeah. Before I start, I worked for the past 13 years with children and autism, with children and adolescents with autism and their families. And typically, the services we have in Greece around to assist families, they are pretty much child-centered, which means that we target straightly to help the children to master cognitive skills, communication skills. The idea of this research project started a few years ago when I was assigned as a scientific director in a mental health unit um, working with families, and I was wondering how we can engage more all family members into our work. Typically, children with autism, they have difficulties in social communication and interaction, and they show restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities. Also, we know that they have sensory differences. So they might struggle with the light, with different food. 75% are male. We have multiple etiologies related to neurobiological causes. We know that it's unrelated to the socioeconomic status or race, and we have a huge heterogeneity in terms of IQ scores, which can stretch from very high functioning to very low functioning. The symptoms are lifelong, and the level of impairment and disability experienced varies greatly. Some individuals may be able to live an independent life with minimal support, and others will need forever lots of support. Intellectual disabilities, challenging behaviors, and psychiatric disorders are often present as well as other health problems. So we can imagine that growing up in a house with a brother or sister with autism, it can be challenging. As the prevalence of autism increases, so does the need to evaluate the effects of autism spectrum disorders on family members who live with a child with autism. Siblings of children with autism appear to be a risk group of children that does not easily fit under a clinical umbrella, so they don't have a specific intervention or there is not often designed a specific support. In many cases, they are overlooked in research, also in practice. Over the past several decades, most research studies have focused on parental experiences and mainly it's maternal. We have lots of research dealing with how mothers experience autism and coping strategies and their coping strategies in the family. Siblings traditionally have received scant attention in the research and clinical practice, yet our understanding about siblings' daily experiences is still limited. As I told you earlier, traditionally most services, they have a child-centered approach, which means the child comes to the center and works with a speech therapist, the occupational therapist, a special educator, in order to get specific skills, to improve specific skills. Nowadays, we have more family-centered services. Traditionally, they have their roots in cognitive and behavioral analysis, in the family-centered services, mainly the parents work as co-therapists. So I would train the parents in order to help the child generalize skills that they have learned in the center. And the point we would like to make through researching in our lab all the experiences of all family members, and in particular here I'm going to present you a small part of some qualitative part with the sisters, is we're looking on ways on how to empower all members and all family members, and in order to do that we need to know what's going on in their lives. So when we tried to pilot some programs while I was working as a scientific director, in order to include family members, I traveled around the UK. I went to different conferences to see what others in other units, what's happening about siblings. And there are a few programs, but they're not assessed in the research. And still, there is a gap. We don't really know what's going on. How does it feel for them to grow up with a brother or sister? So this research idea is based on conducting family with and on behalf of families, targeting advancement in their quality of life. And through inductive reasoning and human experience, we believe that that can matter in order to inform policy and practice in mental health and educational services for families with autism. And why the siblings? Well, the siblings spend a great deal of time together, on average at least 40 minutes out of every hour when they're not at school and they are at home. During childhood, direct interaction with siblings assists neurotypical children in developing important social skills such as conflict resolution, perspective taking, negotiation, compromising, cooperation, and other forms of social competence. Just very few of the things that happen in between siblings. What do we know so far? So we know the results from the research are quite mixed. On the one spectrum, we have like super negative results. Like we know that siblings might be in high risk for depression, stress, adjustment difficulties, feelings, and lots of reports talk about feelings of isolation for family, along with anger, fear, confusion, and guilt for having all the previous feelings, and also differential parental treatment. On the positive side, we have reports that talk about better emotional and behavioral adjustments and better social skills on the typically developing siblings. Also, they have reported quite often higher self-concepts, warmth and closeness in the relationship, and higher social competence. So we have mixed the results are still mixed, and there are quite a few limitations in previous research so far. Mainly the resource of the information of the results that I previously mentioned, they are focused on parental experience and on parental reports. So it's instead of siblings talking actually for themselves, it's mainly the mother and sometimes the teacher. The vast majority of the studies have been quantitative in nature, and the focus on and there has been a great focus on the importance of mother-child interaction and how that might affect autism. And also there have been, traditionally researchers have used a priori predefined categories when researching for family experiences, and that can be quite problematic because of the nature of autism difficulties. So you don't expect to find in a questionnaire specific difficulties around sensory difficulties, communication difficulties, to the extent that these exist, especially in a population of preverbal, quite low functioning children with autism, which is our target group. And also there has been minimal attention for middle childhood and early adolescent experiences. There is the biggest part of research so far has a great range, has included participants from 5 to 20 years old. And we think it's quite important to see in different stages of life, in early childhood, late childhood, adolescence, what does it mean for the siblings? And we can imagine it's going to look different in different life stages. So in an effort to be inclusive and to have an emancipatory project, we try to research with the children. So I employed photo voice methodology. In this case, siblings are involved by collecting data by themselves using the camera. So they had for 2 weeks the camera in their houses, and they would take different pictures that they would talk afterwards in long interviews together. They would determine the content of the data, so we didn't work with predefined categories. It was the siblings which actually brought the agenda on the table. And they would help in analyzing and interpreting the data, which consists of their observations, experiences, and reflections, as well as how they negotiate and construct reality through interactions with their parents, extended members of the family, peers at school. In this way, we hoped to have more engagement, to show respect, to deal with power issues in research with children, and they say picture is equal to in a thousand words. So hopefully it helped them it triggered more memories, and it helped us to contextualize the experience. And we hope that it evoked on a different kind of information, more detailed and more personalized. Very briefly, photo voice is a type of participatory action research in which people, usually those with little power in research, meaning they are not very well represented, use photographs and other or videos in order to picture their environment, their lived experience, and to express their thoughts about them. So the goals of Photo Voice pretty much is to give more power to those that they are still underrepresented in research. In our case, siblings choose their own pictures in order to explore, represent, and analyze their aspects of lives. For the purposes of the current study at this stage, Photo Voice was slightly modified in the sense that there was no plan to meet with policymakers. Traditionally, this type of research ends up with the participants presenting into their communities the results, and hopefully trying to achieve a change in the policies. So their agenda hopefully goes into the policymakers. And participants completed a number of qualitative semi-structured interviews in addition to the photo taking, and keeping a journal about their photographs. In order to make sure that we engage and we give space for the voice of siblings to be heard, we had photo voice interviews, and we also added a type of questioning which is very popular in mentalizing therapy, which is an integrated type of therapy which has elements from CBT, from systemic theory, and we use this type of questioning in order to help the researcher and the children to reconstruct, to mentalize together what does that experience mean. So questions could look like, when the child would show us a picture, we would begin with establishing important facts around the picture or a specific episode that took part in their relationship with their siblings. And we would do sensitive attempts on expanding the story. So can you explain me why you think he did that? What do you think it felt for him? How did Dad react? How would you react? And in that way, you do questions that focusing on self, on others, and you try to reconstruct together the event. How can you think of other ways you might have been able to help him? What would you do if that happens again? Would you feel you would have acted differently? So far at that stage, we have what I'm going to present now. It's about 19 sisters. The typically developing children. The mean age was 12 years and 5 months. And the ASD siblings, it's siblings with autism, they were all low functioning, and the mean age, as you can see. For the first part, the siblings with autism, we used a number of psychometric resources like childhood autism rating scales, psychoeducational profile, and parents also completed sensory profile reports in order to have an idea of how their clinical profiles look like, and to make sure that we have a population as much homogeneous as possible in terms of the lower end of autism. And the typically developing siblings, they had a pre-meeting where we explained them like what's going to be the story with the camera, what they're going to do. They had at least 2 weeks of photo taking available, and then we had up to 4 long interviews with each sister, and 1 debriefing session. In terms of analysis, we used interpretative phenomenological analysis, IPA, which is providing a structured means of exploring in detail how participants are making sense of their personal and social world, and the main currency from an IPA study is the meanings of particular experience, events, states, and holds for participants. Results. So overall, we have a narrative that goes around how typically developing sisters experience autism, and the population, the sample was in Greece. And the overarching theme had to do with environmental influences in the life of sisters growing up with a brother or sister with autism. Analysis of sisters' experiences regarding their siblings with autism generated 4 themes: sisters' interactions with their siblings, sisters' interactions with their parents, a family life centered on autism, which has an impact on everyday life, on everyday sleep, study, and social and leisure time for the sisters, and interpersonal coping. We have a big amount of verbatim in relation to, to sisters' interactions with their siblings. As one sister stated, it's not a case of black and white, it's really a myriads of feelings. In relation to autism features and time spent together, all participants expressed many different feelings. Sisters expressed strong feelings of love for the siblings, and love was a feeling that was all over the interviews, was something that you could really see despite everyday challenges. For instance, Maria stated that her brother with autism is part of her life. He's my companion. We grew up together. I can't imagine going one day to our room not finding him there. He's my family. Autism cannot change that. You need to love your family. It's part of who you are, you know. Another girl, Katerina, stated that she can feel guilty sometimes, and that was quite a representative statement. All the sisters stated similar things when they are not able to give their full attention to their brother or sister with autism. I feel guilty that I don't always do my best to keep her company or teach her new things. Other times I just feel tired, as living with autism is a hard job. Life happens, school happens, and you know, there's just no time sometimes. All the siblings' reflections encompassed feelings of being rejected or sad. She lets her anger out and can't accept what I say or do. It is like she's rejecting me every time I try to offer a solution. To see her bang her head or bite herself is really hard for me. That makes me sad. Discussions with the sisters also were illuminating in terms of how much they enjoy spending time with the siblings together on construction games, running, cycling, using computers and iPads together. They often explain how togetherness means love to them. So one sister said that she actually spends time together because she loves her sister, but her brother, but also is what makes love stronger every day. My brother and I, we stay together all the time. Yes, we are like one. We stay together so much. We wake up at the same time. We brush our teeth at the same time. We are the kids of the house, you know. We love each other and we try to be united. In terms of sisters' interactions with the parents, we had lots of evidence that show about siblings' parentification. All sisters reported to a certain degree helplessness due to the fact that they have to normalize abnormal behaviors they have of showing up from their siblings, or have to deal with an extra burden regarding the house chores, as well as act as carers for their siblings. Feelings of love, feelings that they need to act as carers in the family were apparent through all the interviews. This often leads to conflicts with the parents in terms of house chores and other responsibilities the parents assign them, and in the words of one of the girls, they will constantly remind you what you have to do, since your brother cannot do it. Susie reported helplessness due to the fact that she has to normalize behaviors and deal with it every time she has to babysit her brother or do extra things at home. You constantly know that you have to tidy up his mess. Most importantly, you need to take care of him. Your mom will be busy shopping, cooking, working. Your dad will be working. You need to stay back home with him and make sure he won't eat the peppercorns or play with the olive oil bottle and make a mess. I'm his carer and his servant sometimes. Another important finding, which is new in the literature so far, is father's non-attendance. It was a bit of a contradiction here, because mothers were reported from sisters as the main source of support, and they also said that moms are really good in modeling strategies for them. So, and according to the girls, that was mainly because of the fact that their moms would attend counseling sessions in mental health units or in the private services that the children would attend. And so they knew how to use cards, for example, picture exchange, communication, and that would help. Whereas of significance across all siblings' accounts was the finding that their fathers in their words, cannot deal with autism, or my brother, or both. Fathers find it hard to engage in the everyday family routines and cope with the challenges of autism. Elena, for example, she felt that her dad was not consistent and attuned to the needs of her brother as opposed to her mother. When he realizes that my brother keeps on doing silly things, then the battle begins. They both shout and fight. I think they don't really know how to play together. My mom has rules. She follows a schedule and she asks the therapists what is good, what she should do. I think my dad has no idea what to do with him. In a similar way, Peggy feels that her father began to withdraw from what was a family thing before, when her brother's tolerance of public spaces got lower and autism was more obvious. It's sad because we all used to go together to the ex shop. It was a good fun actually. But that was when we were young. Nowadays, Dad says he can't stand being around us in there, and my brother gets wild. A family life centered on autism. Here we had some new findings in terms especially of sleeping routines, study routines, and leisure routine. Leisure and holiday routines is well reported from previous research, but it was quite interesting to see that all but two siblings characterize their sleep as poor based on factors such as frequent nighttime waking by their brother or sister with autism, and in many cases the current sample shared a room together, which made it even more difficult. Siblings report that their sleep was affected by their ASD sibling having difficulty with sleep, onset on school nights, waking up earlier on weekend mornings, sleeping in unusual positions, making noises, being afraid to sleep in the dark, resisting going to bed, making involuntary movements during sleep, and making rhythmic movements while falling asleep. Nikki describes disruptions in her sleep pattern due to her sister's behaviors. And she also states that this affects her the morning after when she has to go to school. It is so bad when I have to wake up early to go to school after dealing with her being awake in the middle of the night. My sister is up at least 4 to 5 times in the middle of the night. She laughs and rocks in her bed, makes noises, or just screams, "Mama, Mama." I get very annoyed and I cover myself with pillows and try to pretend I'm sleeping, hoping she will fall asleep again. In many cases, the sisters reported they might have to sleep for long periods, like for months in the sofa until the sleep gets better. Yeah. So, and last, we have interpersonal coping. All sisters reported that they have a need to feel understood. They need time, they need respite because they feel there's too much on the shoulders, too many tasks, they need too many things they need to take care. And they also, interestingly, they reported that there is a sense of positive personal growth for them. In many cases, they stated that growing up with a brother or sister with autism has actually made them to be more patient, to appreciate more good things in life. And it was also interesting the way they made sense of features of autism. So the main categories, we have permission, so we use fake names, but these are real pictures. The main categories of the photos we collected had to do with birthday parties, school assemblies, siblings sharing time together, lunch routines, sleep routines, sensory and self-simulating behaviors, supportive family members, hobbies and talents, and favorite objects. It was really interesting to see that all of the siblings, they reported that they can't have, for example, birthday parties anymore at home, as their brother and sister will engage in really distracting and bad behaviors, and that would cause problems because the classmates, and they actually reported quite dramatic events from the last birthday party they remembered they had years ago at home, where the brother ran around naked or he had a tantrum, and the next day they didn't want to go to school, they didn't know how to face their classmates. Some of the photos and some of the issues they stated, which I tried briefly to include earlier. Lots of love, lots of difficulties, and lots of feelings that sometimes it's not fair, I have to do everything. Why it is important to know more and to engage siblings more and more into these types of research. they are the experts of their own experiences, so they are the ones that we really need to give voice to if we want to learn more in order to be able to create interventions that they are actually addressing their needs. There is a need for appreciation of the positive interactions and of the life that it is possible, because they reported lots of love and lots of positive things going on while planning including on our clinical planning strategies that are going to help the siblings for the parts that still remain a struggle when living with autism. The general message is that our clinical planning for those working with autism must guard against marginalizing the siblings' experiences. In terms of methodological approach, we felt that combining mentalizing type of questions with photo voice research, it was very child friendly, it was very engaging. They also had a sense of empowerment. They were really, the sisters mentioned that they were really happy that someone actually cared about how they feel. They felt good having the camera, playing around with the pictures. And many of the categories we found were already reported, such as differential parental treatment and feelings of love. But with our approach, we actually got previously unreported insights on some previously reported problems. So we knew that they would face peer problems. But for example, we had lots of details that could be related with not being able to invite people at home, not having birthday parties, or not being able to attend school assemblies. Most importantly, a number of new concepts were seen, and these included siblings as carers day and night, and having limited involvement of fathers, and sleep and social deprivation and troubles with studies at home. We had lots of stories about how hard it is to actually keep safe your homework so that your brother doesn't repeat or destroy it, and the effect that this would have the day after at school for them. So as we said, yes, siblings, they can be in the center as agents to identify their problems and many main areas of concern, and to set the agenda for future changes in policy as an essential goal in relation to both quality improvement and cost containment. Future research, it would be interesting to know more about the sleep patterns in the family. We know that children with autism have atypical patterns of sleep. It would be interesting to know more how does this affect the whole family members. And there's a great need to rebalance our mindset in both research and practice. As we said in the very beginning, there is a tendency to pathologize a lot the families with autism, or to work a lot in terms of fixing autism, helping the autistic child to make new skills. I think it's also important to include family, to empower families in our clinical meetings with them, and synergize all together in order to find strategies. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, a quick question. I really appreciate your attention to sleep, which we know is so important
Yeah.
for development. Are you exploring any broader advocacy work around alternate school schedules so that they can sleep in longer and giving them more flexibility?
Yes.
Study and look at their development.
Mm-hmm.
I think those broader social, political, economic, socioeconomic structures like schooling and work and the housing situation are all really important.
Mm-hmm.
Accommodating these altered life patterns that they're facing.
Yes.
Can you talk about that, or do you
Yes, and mainly, many people in our lab, they are pure academics. I'm really in between. I'm trying now to finish my PhD, and I come from a professional world where where I've spent lots of time with the siblings, with the families. So that has, biased me in a sense, but has also made me think that it's really important to actually gain lots of more access in what they think and what their needs are in order to be able to provide this type of accommodations, really. Because at the moment we mainly provide accommodations for the individuals with autism or for the parents. For example, I know that in Greece and in some other countries, they might leave work earlier in order to pick up or to deal with that. But as you nicely said, it appears that we might have to do this kind of accommodations with siblings. If they haven't slept good for months, for example, we expect that this will affect school life, social life. Also, in terms of groups of them to meet all the siblings with autism, which has started happening the last 10 years, but still we don't know exactly their needs. So my sense is that we have a random agenda, talking about all the pathology and how hard it is, and or teaching them how to communicate with their siblings, where sometimes they just need breaks. So in terms of community, we might have places where they can actually have fun, and not all the time meet and talk about problems and talk about autism.